Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to the Costume channel. Today I have a wonderful costume designer interview that I'm doing with Amanda Riley. She is the costume designer for We Were Liars. I have it on the top there so I don't forget. And it's on Amazon right now. And actually, Amanda, I didn't tell you this, but it is #1 in Canada. So that's really exciting.
Yay.
Yeah. And so, Amanda, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. You're coming here from Paris, which is in Paris, France, not Paris, Ontario. So I'm very happy to have you. And of course, I'm in Toronto. So we're across the ocean from one another, but it's wonderful to meet you. Thank you so much.
So great to be here, Heidi. What an absolute honor, especially knowing that you're coming from Canada.
Yes, and we had a quick little chat earlier because the show is shot in Nova Scotia, which and I lived there for 3 years, and so I'm excited to learn more about all of that. But so everyone can get to know you a bit better. Why don't you tell us about yourself and maybe how you got into costume design?
Yes, so let's see, where do I start? I'll do just a little kind of backstory. I grew up in Wisconsin in a very small town, kind of close to Lake Michigan. So, as I was telling you earlier, Heidi, being from a small town like that, kind of this working class small town, gave me a lot of memories of nostalgic memories of home, especially being around the Great Lakes. And when I was 18 years old, after I graduated high school, I moved to Los Angeles and I went to school. I wanted to be in fashion design. I learned how to sew growing up. Me and my sister would sew. We used to love the Grateful Dead. I'm aging myself in high school, so we would make different, patchwork clothing in high school and everything. And once I went to fashion school and kind of understand the technical aspect of it and how it's really about trends and some of it fashion can be a lot about just business rather than designing pretty clothes. I chose the path of following costume design. And I found my way onto sets. I did whatever I could to intern, had the great opportunity to do a bunch of different period things early on in my career, and then eventually just worked my way up in and out, working for amazing costume designers along the way, and just continued to keep at it.
Well, so tell me a little bit about how you like. I know you've got a pretty substantial body of work, but then how did you get involved with We Were Liars?
So, Nzinga Stewart is a dear friend of mine, and she was hired to do the pilot. We did so. What also just to a little backstory of how what brought me to Paris. Nzinga and I did a show called From Scratch, and we filmed part of it in Los Angeles, and the second part of it in Italy, Sicily, and Florence. And um, just being an artist, being in these incredible locations, I really asked myself a deep question, which was, you know, what do I want out of life? Do I want to be an artist that's constantly nourishing that side of myself, or do I want to continue to kind of grind and get ahead in all of this? So anyway, that body of work was such an incredible representation of Italian culture and fashion, and such a sign of the times. We did it in the early 2000s that it really changed my life being behind the camera. So that brought me to Paris. And so that was a project that Nzinga and I did. It was also a long, we did 8 episodes, similarly block shot like this one, kind of a limited series, if you will. And so when this project came to her, she pitched it to me. And I had seen the book, I didn't know about it. But the second I started devouring it, it happened in one day. And I mean, this story, and to be able to have the opportunity to understand these characters and to read the book from Emily Lockhart's words, it touched me so deeply, and I knew that it was a story that I really wanted to tell.
Now, oh, so you've mentioned that you've read the book, because I've worked with, or sorry, I've interviewed some designers who get a little bit nervous about reading the source material. They get, they're like, it might screw me up, kind of thing. So regarding the book, well, first off, I wanted to mention to you that I was reading some of the reviews that people were sort of surprised that it was like actually a thriller, and maybe they didn't read the description ahead of time. They thought it might have been like a light teen romance or something. So when they got into it, they're like, "Oh my god!" So were you surprised when you were reading the book about like the mystery and everything, or were you just like totally immersed in that?
I was so incredibly shocked at the end. I had like a physical reaction that really stood with me. Um, and even still, like it is such an incredibly, for the genre of content that it is, it's so moving. It's so well written. It's really touched me, and I didn't see it coming.
Now, regarding the descriptions of the book, because I haven't read the book, were there like some really good descriptions of the clothing, like for instance, the lemon hunt, or any of the other sort of milestone events that happened in the story, or regarding cadence? Like, or did you sort of purely have to begin from scratch with those ideas?
It's really both. There were definitely cues given in the writing to help inform who Cadence was. And the magic of being able to do motion picture is you have the book, you've got source material, you've got the writer, you have someone that's been invested in it for 10 years. You have the script that's then written. And, all of it it's information, but it changes and it moves. So yes, there was a lot of information given. There was a lot of description of the world that we were building. But of course, there is also, when you meet an actor, you meet the person that's going to channel this material. That becomes something totally different. And while I feel that we very, very much kept true to the story of who Cadence Sinclair was, speaking of her specifically, it really deserved its own individual touch of who Emily Lint is playing Cadence. And that's what I feel really proud that we were able to display through the show and through her costumes.
Now, Amanda, if you're okay with this, I've got some of your mood boards, but because I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the Sinclair family, which are like, I don't know how you describe them, like one percenters, affluent, like they're billionaires, I guess. Um, and so how did you approach like, I guess you had to sort of come up with a cohesive look for the family because they're spending these summers every year. But were there some films or fashion eras or historical influences that you would have like leaned into a little bit? And I can maybe go through some of your pictures if that's okay while we're doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely, first and foremost, I feel like just understanding. I immediately went to the Kennedys. I immediately went to Hyannisport, what was happening at that time. For me, especially when dealing with luxury and wealth, and also somebody that has, spent some time in Paris and kind of understands this really iconic, elegant, classic, clean. The Sinclairs are not a family that needs to try hard. They have everything that they need. Although every meal that they get together, every time they're in front of Harris, they're well dressed. The shoe is coordinating. There's a piece of statement jewelry. Everything's put together. Things have been prepped. They have help to be able to organize their clothing and keep things completely well tailored. So I really wanted to find the balance between that and also a family getting together in their favorite place in the world on Beechwood Island and enjoying the summertime.
Yeah, I was going to say it kind of reminds me of Downton Abbey where, they change for every meal or every occasion. And it is sort of like performative in many ways, like for Harris, like they're putting on a performance. Was that sort of what you were thinking?
Yeah, and also too, it's when you're starting a show, and especially because the pilot had so many moving elements and so many things that we really wanted a lot of the story. We wanted to give such a big outline of what we were about to display in the rest of the series with the pilot. So that was such a huge not responsibility, of course, responsibility, but that was such a great opportunity to be able to really crystallize how each individual, like I had this great costume designer back in the day, and she would tell me, that they're comic book characters. So we're creating these comic book characters. So when I think of all the characters and I think of them as a palette and how we're putting together, so having an ensemble cast like this, colors, it's a painting. And so making sure that each individual character is who they are, very Carrie being the wealthy bohemian art gallery, kind of retreat gal, Bess very more kind of Nantucket classic, Penny, definitely the polished Kennedy-esque
Mhm.
energy. I think that that's really helpful in setting the whole scene.
Now like I was mentioning to you that when I first had written some of my questions for you that um, I hadn't finished the show. So I was looking at like the summer of 16 and then summer of 17, but there actually are quite a few flashbacks as well that I noted when I was finishing the show. So you have like, all these milestone events, like you have 4th of July, you have Father's Day, you have the lemon hunt, which of course is amazing. So do you want to tell me about the color palettes for maybe summer 16 and the flashbacks versus, am I correct in saying that summer 17 had a much cooler feeling? Maybe there were filters. I couldn't quite figure it out, but would you mind talking a little bit about that? Sorry
Yeah,
for
of
such a long
course.
question.
It is very interesting too that you bring up. We have the summer 16, and the summer 16, especially because Cadence is at the middle of it, is very solaire. It's bright, it's fun, it's sandy, it's shimmering. Beach waves on the skin. There's jewelry, and even though in summer 17 we do have some of these milestone events, the idea is that it is a little bit less constructed. You have women that have lost their children, they've lost the matriarch of the Sinclair family. And so the idea is that the Sinclairs are shoulders back, chin up. They're going to get through whatever they need to get through in the clothing. It's important that the clothing reflects that because they're still going to go on being Sinclairs with the help and the labels and all of these things. However, things are crumbling deeply behind the surface. And so when it comes to silhouettes and things not being as structured, it is kind of a subtle way to be able to reflect that on camera without doing it in front of your face, but also where I could use is what I'm thinking of right now is a dress for Carrie that we did Father's Day. This beautiful
Mhm.
kind of marigold, gorgeous dress. I think you might even have a picture of it.
Yes.
In summer 17, the color, it's that same kind of silhouette, but the colors have been stripped. So the idea is like there's a layer that can't be hidden. There's a layer that has been taken off of the Sinclairs, and we wanted to really reflect that and all across the board.
Okay, so you had this sort of cohesive look for the family, for the Sinclairs, but how did you? I think you sort of touched on this a little bit. How did you sort of try to make each character individual? I mean, obviously you have the generations, right? So that's helpful. You've got I love the names, the liars, the parent or the moms, and then what are the young ones called again?
The
The
littles.
littles. Yeah, so you have these nice groupings, so it sort of helps you a little bit there. So what did you do to approach the individual looks for everybody?
Because the story was so specific about who, where each person was. So Carrie is living in Brooklyn. She is an ex-addict. She's a jewelry designer. She is a bit bohemian. She's dating Ed, which is ultimately not what Harris would like. And then, of course, Gat comes along. So, even though her labels are very high end and her look is very put together, she can kind of play with it a little bit and show that she has an aspect of herself that is searching a little bit. She's doing a little bit of soul searching. And even though it's not outward and you don't see it, and there's still this aspect of things being hidden. And, in some of the episodes, we kind of see where there's this greed that kind of exists in the family. She has this. In her clothing it's a little bit more free flowing. She's a little bit her point of view is a little bit different than Bess, for example, who we have used this word. If it's okay, we'll still use it. But the trad wife,
Oh yeah.
yeah, just a woman that's kind of very happy with her role in the family, very happy that she's raising the kids, keeping everything together, and we see it very well at the end of episode 1, how Bess is coming to Salty Dan and she says, what's wrong? I'm doing all the things. I'm doing everything I can, which means making sure that she's, fit, that her hair is always done, that the outfits are extremely well tailored, and also that she looks beautiful. And then also Penny, who is stunningly beautiful,
Mhm.
perfect head of hair, statuesque, um, looks very good in extremely tailored clothes. She can do a long line. She can do dresses. So I really think that the characters themselves helped to inform what they could wear.
Yes, absolutely. By the way, it must have been confusing having Candace and Cadence like that. Did that get kind of difficult after a while? Do you have to do name tags? Uh, I read in your show notes that gosh, I can't even imagine shopping this show. You had shoppers sourcing pieces like from all over the world, like, and you're in Paris, so that would have been good, right? New York and LA. So how did that work while filming in Nova Scotia? Like that must have presented some challenges. Like, did you go to Halifax? Did you go to Dartmouth? Where did you go?
Yeah, so, as I was gearing up to get ready to leave for the show, and like most projects, you get a show and you're leaving within weeks. So, I did as much as I could in terms of prep and reading scripts and getting my head wrapped around the project as much as I could. And, I was willing to come to Canada and see, okay, I worked in Vancouver, and Vancouver actually at one time had department stores, had a lot of boutiques. Canada is really well known for their designer consignment. They do a really good job with that. So once I got on the ground in Halifax and kind of understood the limitations, obviously clothing is also based on the demographic that it's serving. And people are sailing, and there's students and things like that, so there just isn't the level of high-end stores that I believed that the Sinclairs would be shopping at. So I had incredibly supportive showrunners and executive producers, so I was able to call in costume designers, different people from my team that lived it from New York to Los Angeles and of course in Paris, to bring in different pieces, because even though it was summertime and we're doing a summertime show, you're really not going to be able to find every possible thing you need. And especially when it comes to, and I'll use Bess as an example. So, Bess had a very specific silhouette. Dresses that were, beautiful and kind of open at the chest, but had this kind of traditional 50s wife kind of feeling, especially in
Mhm.
summer 16. Some of that shifted in summer 17. So that isn't something that's always at the stores. So I really relied on a lot of the different brands that I follow. I'm also somebody that loves dresses and loves to dress in a feminine nature. So, I really had to use the different designers that I've used in the past, for all of them really, to be able to really cherry pick. It's not as easy as just going in and saying, okay, well, this is that and this. You have to really accumulate as much as you possibly can and think like, okay, where can I find this piece? And actually this picture is
Oh,
so
fantastic.
amazing, the lemon hunt,
Mhm,
because when you see a dress like this for Mamie, this
mhm.
incredible lemon bias, I mean, some of these dresses, when we found them, it's the magic that takes place in film and create and motion picture and in filmmaking. There's a magic, there's an energy, there's a spark. So this picture is great because it really represents the individual characters.
Actually, Amanda, I know this like from watching The White Lotus that a lot of times designers will try to find like local artists or smaller away from the luxury brands. Did you do any of that? Did you work with any smaller designers that you'd had an experience with before?
Also wanted to really support Nova Scotia as much as I possibly can. Any designers, any of the small brands that came. So there was a couple of stores that we went to all the time. A couple of them were designer consignment, and they really helped us with being able to pull out anything that they thought would be representative of, without giving too much of the story away, representative of the energy of the show, representative of the Sinclair's summertime. And there's a swimsuit that uh, Mirren wears in episode 3 that is actually a local Canadian designer. And they have very small runs of stuff. So I was only able to use one of their suits. But yes, as much as I possibly can, I believe in sustainable practices when it comes to clothing. I choose brands like Reformation, Bruno Cucinelli, who, even though the price tag is very high, he's done so much for fashion, constantly donating money. Doen, which often uses organic fabric. So that's a huge part at vintage as much as I possibly can, which can be difficult, of course, when you're working with stunts. And it's very nice to find one of a kind. But yeah, on this one, we had the freedom to really like find as much as we possibly can because we're not following trends per se. I'm looking for things that are extremely classic, things that, could have been worn 20 years ago by Tipper. Maybe Carrie has brought a blouse. I have this great in episode, I think it's episode 1, this really beautiful kind of tomato colored vintage Yves Saint Laurent blouse that, the idea was it could have been something from Tipper's closet that she had in,
Mhm. Yeah,
80s.
absolutely, like, kinda like Mrs. Maisel, where she Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, where she's always stealing from her mom's closet.
Exactly, because that to me makes sense. They
Yeah.
have a closet on Beechwood. They have things hanging
Mhm.
there. So yes, they're putting themselves together, but oh, that's cute. I want to wear mom's little top.
Oh, speaking of that, this is totally off topic, but like the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, would they have selected their wardrobes ahead of time? Like, I don't know if you've seen the show, but in Mrs. Maisel, they actually pull out their rolling racks and go through everything because they're going to be going to the Catskills. Did you kind of have that in mind that they would have selected some of their wardrobe ahead of traveling, like knowing they would have all these milestone events and such?
Absolutely, yes. And I think also the idea is too, as we can see again in the pilot episode, that there's also shopping to be had. Martha's Vineyard does have a handful of great shops. So there's shopping. The Sinclairs have shoppers, potentially stylists. But yes, that things that have been thought about, it's not a one-time thing. Every summer they're going to Beechwood. So the idea that we're going to have Father's Day, we're going to do 4th of July, we've got the lemon hunt. These things have been thought about ahead of time. They've been fit, they've been styled, and they are ready to present when they need to be ready for any of these events that happen on Beechwood.
By the way, I don't know if you know this, but there's a couple of websites like Shop Your TV, and they're already like all over the show, and they're on Instagram. Have you noticed that? So
Yeah.
have they been like DMing you, like, what is this outfit? Where'd you get
Yes,
this
and
one?
when we're ready to talk spoilers, there is a dress at the very end of the show that people have been trying to look for,
Mhm.
and nobody can find it because it's a dress that I custom made for the show. And yeah, that was really fun. I saw a couple comments like, "Oh my gosh, we're really trying to find this dress," and yeah, it was so. I don't know if I can go into this or not.
Well, why don't we do a couple more
Okay.
questions and then
Yeah.
we'll get to that. So I just wanted to ask you about some of the side characters because you
Yes.
have this very large ensemble cast that are the Harris family, but then you have all of these other side characters, like even the staff, like you have the chefs and all the servants, and I don't even know if that's a politically correct term to say. By the way, the staff,
Yeah.
and but then you have Gat and Ed and Salty Dan, which is, by the way, that name is cracks me up. And so do you want to talk a little bit about working on that? That must have been pretty
Yeah.
challenging. It's just the enormity of all the clothes you have. I can't even imagine.
Yeah, the enormity and, also, as a costume designer and also in my real life, and one reason that's so fun to live in Paris, like, I love sourcing. I love going to brocantes, which are like flea markets here. I love shopping myself. So I tried to do as much shopping myself, but because I wasn't really anywhere that had a lot of stores, I had to really give direction and trust a lot of people. However, dressing these other characters in, and I guess you could kind of say like regular contemporary clothing that worked for their character also was so fun.
Mhm.
Gat's character was wonderful because I wanted something for him that felt authentic to who he was. He's a kid living in New York City and obviously has access to cool clothes and bigger brands, but he doesn't have the budget to be able to shop. So the idea that he's getting something secondhand, he's probably thrifting stuff.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
what's happening a lot. I know it was even when I was in high school. So just, what would make sense for Gat to wear? How many things is he really bringing? And of course, the suit being Sam's, as mentioned, how it was tailored down to fit him. Gat's mother was Maya, was one of my favorite characters to dress, even though we had one look for her. Being able to dress her because she is such a contrast, especially to the Lemon Hunt. was incredible. We used really beautiful statement jewelry, and just because she's an artist coming from the theater and she's coming from New York, so really I had so much fun dressing that character. And again, the directors and the showrunners and the EPs were all really behind, letting me experiment with some stuff. And of course, so was our beautiful actress Karen, who was really like down to kind of go for it. So it's all of it is a part of a beautiful aspect of the job, to be able to get deep into the psyche of these people and really understand the world that they're coming from. And especially with Maya, Gat's mom, whether the show comes back and that story is developed, is very important that at a glance we could kind of tell who she was. So yeah, thank you for asking that. And then also for Ed, his journey, his
Mhm.
clothing journey was also very specific, because he's coming from New York, but he's spending time on the island. So there's a mix of him feeling like a gallery owner, kind of put together, but also hip, right? I mean, you're living in New York City, you have access to cool stuff and cool designers. He's obviously with somebody like Carrie, who's very cool, is attracted to interesting pieces, and they're interesting people. So that was really fun to do as well, to really take the journey with his character and figure out really how to nail it, where it's making sense for where he's coming from and where he is on the island. Summertime.
Now for the Beechwood staff, though, did you come up with sort of like standard uniform, like, golf shirt, trousers? I can't exactly remember what you came up with, but did you sort of say, okay, this is what we think a Beechwood staff would wear, and then sort of play off of that? Like then you'd have all the different elements of that, like the kitchen staff and such.
Yeah, we did. And I think that just from my perspective, although it always sounds easier when said actually than when it's done, sourcing pieces and fitting people and whatnot, really wanted something that felt like it was a part of just like a moving background. So the staff was always there, they were always dressed, but how did it kind of blend into the world? So using neutrals was a really great way to do that, kind of crisp white shirts, and we custom made aprons, and made it like clean enough, approachable, but not in the way, nothing that stood out. And then, of course, when we had the lemon hunt, we had some sashes, and Father's Day, we also did some sashes. And then in terms of just the different staff, the people that would come in the boats, Eben, of course, had a logo, a hat and a jacket,
Mhm.
and kind of a yacht logo, which in my opinion was very classic. Although with him, he was such a fun character. It just who he played as a character was amazing, and as a human being, such a special soul. So we were able to do a little bit of, I did like a little bit of light blue for him, which gave him a bit of a softness, which I really liked.
Actually, he was one of my favorite characters. I really loved his character.
Yeah, he's great.
Uh, Yeah, and I was gonna say, I kind of love how the staff sort of, like I said, I wasn't quite exactly sure what they were wearing because they sort of blended into the background, which felt like really meta, because as I think that's how Harris would want it. He doesn't want them to stand out. He doesn't,
Mm-mm.
that's what you're meant to be. You're meant to be in the it's very classist, right?
Yep, he wants them to know what his needs are before he
Mhm,
does, and be
mhm.
there to make it happen.
So we just have a bit more time. So maybe what we'll do is now maybe we can talk. There's going to be some spoilers here. So if anybody hasn't seen the show, please maybe you can pause and then come back and look at it after you've finished the show, because it's a big surprise. So why don't we talk a little bit about Cadence's finale outfit, as you were mentioning. Actually, I think it's featured in at least a couple of episodes. Is that true, or do I have that wrong?
Yes. So yes. So
You find-
episode 7
Yeah.
is when we have the lemon hunt dinner. So the idea is that, somebody is the winner for the lemon hunt dinner. Obviously, this is a big event. Everybody waits for it all year. The prize is huge. And of course, so that night is when we finally see what is going to be the finale dress, without knowing that what the events are going to happen. Again, then later on that night.
Yeah, so I've got okay, so just what you were saying to me earlier is, so you can't find this dress. This was a custom design. I don't have a sketch of the dress, but here's a swatch. This is so fun. So everyone can see that. Maybe, you know what, maybe a cosplayer will recreate it.
So yes, that fabric, it's fabric is kind of a tough thing in this day and age. Finding the right fabric is the most important part of designing a garment, in my opinion. So we had kind of decided on what the shape was that we wanted. She's running, of course, at the very end, escaping the fire. There it is, the spoiler. So we wanted something that had a lot of movement and a lot of volume. And of course, silk was the best way to go because it's a natural fiber. Of course, if there's anyone that got too close to the flames, it wouldn't go up like some of the other fabrics. And again, to kind of have that movement so we could kind of see her running away. And this fabric, I remember seeing it for the first time, and I realized like this was it. This is going to be the fabric. And of course, those are different burn tests that we're doing to kind of see how the fabric is going to respond. We ended up using that dress on the stunt double who ended up going in the water. So there was no dress that wasn't used. There was not one dress that wasn't put to good use. And when I originally chose that fabric, it was a fabric that we found in New York at Mood. I had a costume designer who was doing some shopping for me, Erin Burke, and she found this fabric. And so, we looked at how much yardage there would be. And of course, in Canada, we're cutting in meters, which is a little bit bigger. So we get the fabric, we cut it, we say, okay, this is however many dresses we need, we're good to go. And then, as the creative process unfolds, ideas start to also unfold, and there's more creativity. Okay, can we do this, can we do that? So we ended up having to print another 30 meters of this same particular fabric so that we could use it on our body doubles. So that was something that we didn't see coming. In the end, it all worked out perfectly. We had everything we needed right in the nick of time. But those are things that you never know until you get into it. But super happy with how the dress turned out. I think it feels very Kate and Sinclair. It was something in the story that was chosen by Harris. And couldn't be happier. So happy to
It's
design
funny that you
just
said
like
it was
that for
silk.
anyone.
Oh, sorry, Amanda. It's funny that you said it was silk because I thought it was like a cotton, maybe like a chintz. Like it didn't, like for me, it didn't look like silk. But what was the weight of it like? Was it a substantial weight?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't quite like a lining fabric, but a
Mhm.
little, it did have enough weight so that we did a lot of different tests because, of course, there were different fabrics that we had considered, and different uh, and had made the dress and had a bunch of different samples going before we decided on the final fabric. But this particular one, something about the way it moved, something about the way it had a little bit more structure than just a regular. And I don't know if that was because it almost has like a little bit of a file in it. So yeah, really happy with how it all turned out.
And I guess it sort of I love how you did like it's like slightly shorter in the front with a bit of a train so that when she ran, I'm assuming it's a stunt, you get this beautiful like floating. And then did they have to add this, the cinders in post? How did that work? Or did you do anything practical?
Yeah, I mean, we both, the
Oh,
answer was with both. We ended up not doing fire. There were fire bars that she ran through, but the kind of idea in the end was that we took a mannequin and then put the mannequin on fire.
oh, okay.
The real mannequin on fire is going through. And then also, I just wanted to give credit where it's due. So the kind of like the little bit shorter, longer in the front was an idea that came to me from Karina McKenzie, our incredible showrunner, visionary, and writer.
Mhm.
And again, I'm so thrilled. So much of what we do is collaborative. So much of
Mhm.
what we do is everybody working together to really create what ends up being the final dress. So that was an idea that she gave us, and again, I'm so thrilled. One of my favorite, if I think about one of my favorite music videos of all time, it is Guns N' Roses' November Rain. And if you remember Stephanie Seymour, I've never seen it again, the kind of high-low wedding dress. Obviously, the one that we created was very different, but
Mhm.
I just think the idea of being able to do something different that is not off the rack, that is a little bit, I mean, I don't want to say that it's a risk because I think the dress turned out to be something incredibly elegant and classic and beautiful. But yeah, I liked that it was just a bit different.
And, I just wanna ask you about this picture. Was this done for the stunt scene?
Yes, so I included that picture
Mhm.
because, I think even when I watch movies and series, I forget like what it takes to make these scenes. And so all of the moments when they're jumping in the water and then when you see them underground, this is the big, it's a like a military kind of training pool that they use to study search and rescue. So
Oh,
just
I
like
was wondering where this
showing like
was.
yeah,
Mhm.
what it looks like and what it looks like when we're doing underwater scenes. Like I find it to be, after being in this business 20 plus years, when I see stuff like this, I'm still amazed when I walk into set. I'm like, wow, we're making we're making television. And just to be able to show at a glance what it's like. I mean, all the time and energy and the people in wetsuits and how hard the actors work getting in and out. And it's amazing. So there's this one had a lot of people with so much heart and soul. So I mean, I can say from myself to every single person in my department to anybody that I interacted with on this show. And like I was saying at the beginning, when I watch it, I get emotional because we gave it everything. And I really hope that comes back across on camera because this is an extremely important story that we were able to tell. So I think we all respected the work that needed to go into being able to tell it.
Yeah, actually, there's a picture here of Gat. Sorry, I don't have the actor's name, but in his wetsuit, because I'm
Yeah.
assuming there was so many, like so many times when they'd have to be in the water. There's a lot of jumping off of docks.
This one, I think also too, one thing, and when we were at Tribeca, this was mentioned in a couple, they were kind of laughing about it when the actors were being interviewed. And Joseph was actually saying it, I think, and maybe Shubham as well. But the water was a lot colder
Mhm.
than I think we had thought it was going to be, or had kind of imagined it, especially for actors going in and out. So the idea that they were paddleboarding earlier that day, I think we were hoping to put them in swimsuits, swim trunks. And then we had decided, okay, this is a wetsuit situation. And every time I see the scene and every time I see pictures of it, you just realize that it's if when things change, especially when things have to change on the fly, it's a lot of times for good reason. And this ended up looking amazing. It was wonderful.
Mhm. And that necklace that, Gad is wearing, is that the one that he eventually gives to Cadence?
Yes. So this necklace, I am a trained folk herbalist,
Oh,
and
you
so
are? Amazing.
this necklace is something that is something that I hold dear to me because I found it actually in Toronto. And they are Tulsi beads. And so
Mhm.
in the Hindu religion, of course, Gat's talking about how he was in India, and I've been to India several times and definitely study Hinduism and as well as a lot of the great religions of the world. But being the Tulsi bead, it's a very special and sacred plant that it used in India. So the fact that he had these Tulsi beads around his neck, just it's a very subtle way of showing the depth of who this person was, who Gat was, and how he touched Cadence because he was different, because he came from this rich history and was really connected to his past and his family and to his lineage.
Yeah, and then also I love the fact that obviously because he isn't giving her a new necklace, he's giving her the one that he wore. So it's very personal. And I now I'm thinking he probably wasn't wearing it. We spoilers as a ghost. Was he not wearing? I can't remember now.
He did wear it as a ghost.
Okay.
He did wear it as a ghost. Yeah, and of course, it's kind of coming back to reading the book for the first time. Like you don't know. It's like you almost want to go back and read the book again and watch the show again to be like, wait, so they were. just being able to do that, and
Mhm.
even knowing the story, knowing the book, and having to understand like everything, all the words, everything they say, this is where they are, the different, how they're separated from the family. I just think it was such an awesome opportunity to be able to tell that story in such a subtle way, because that's really the reveal.
Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us, Amanda. I have Daria. Do we have time for two more questions? How are we doing here? I just want to check in with her.
I would say like probably one, maybe two.
Okay, okay. We'll just okay. I'm going to do the your favorite costume, if that's okay, and
Yeah,
then any upcoming projects. Is that okay?
of course.
And I'll do a quick little wrap up, and then you
Okay,
can get to your
awesome.
next interview.
You're amazing,
This
Heidi.
is
Thank
so
you so
fun,
much.
though. This has been so
It's
fun. Okay,
so
so
fun. You're awesome.
oh, you are too.
Okay. So, I've been like, actually, my favorite costume has changed. First and foremost, I think the finale dress was wonderful. I know how good that Emily felt in it. And so that just, I was actually quite scared to design that dress in the first place. So that's definitely, I would say, my favorite costume. When I think about who my favorite character is, it's definitely Carrie. There's
Oh.
two dresses that stood out for me that I absolutely loved. One of them is for Father's Day. Yes, Father's Day. She wears this incredible etro dress. So it's almost like a shift, long shift that's a little bit fitted, and has this incredible bright pattern on it. Stunning piece, one of a kind. The second I saw it, I was like, yep, this is coming with us. Um, Julie was down with it. It was her episode, and we put it on, and she looked incredible. Mamie looked amazing. And then at the end for the Lemon Hunt dinner, we used this incredible Jason Wu dress. And the dress itself is made of this upholstery fabric. So it's a little bit thick. It's not what you would think. Um, I would say it's not like a safe choice. And, we were kind of going back and forth, like, oh, is this the right thing? And seeing if there were other options. And in the end, I was so grateful that they let it fly, because it is such a cool dress, so amazing. And what you may not notice is there's a nautical theme on the dress. So to me, that of course very tied very much into the island. So I'm really, her pieces I think were amazing. But there were so many, as a designer, especially on a big show like this, where I tried to shop as much as I possibly could. You get really, you fall in love with so many of the clothes.
Yeah, Amanda, I was saying to you that I was an 80s girl. So I swear to God, I went through like I wore nautical. I either did pretty in pink or I did nautical. That was my everything was boat necks, stripes. I had like bubble skirts. It was crazy. Like
I would love
seriously,
to see a picture of you,
with
Heidi.
some red. Yeah, yeah. I should see if I can find one for you. And actually, I've kind of gone back to my Molly Ringwald haircut. Like I used to have
It's
a Molly.
great, and you still have the stripes.
I am wearing stripes today, right? So anyway, one more question for you. So, like, you probably have had this wrapped up for a while. When did you wrap the show?
So we were done. I started April of last year, and I was done in October. So I decided to take time off. I went to Bali. I went to, I really just wanted to take some time to myself and recharge my creative battery. And as far as upcoming projects, I have a fashion design project that I'm working on. So that's a work in progress right now, and hopefully be able to share that with you guys very soon.
Amazing. I can't wait to hear about it. Now, we don't know if there's okay, so this is a limited series. Now, something like this happened with Shogun. It was considered a limited series, but suddenly there's a season 2. And I know, I haven't read the books, but I know there's a prequel. So, maybe the showrunners are open to it. Obviously, the show's doing really well. Are we open to maybe another season? Maybe you can't
Yes,
talk about it.
I think that is the hope. Of course, there are 3 books in the series now, and the second one is amazing. So the hope is that we can all return to Beechwood and continue to continue to tell the story of the Sinclairs.
Yeah, and like because I felt like after I finished watching the show that it wrapped up very beautifully, but it was left open, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we still had and actually I went on Reddit, but have you ever gone on Reddit? There's all these theories that it's really the drugs that are giving, I don't know if that's mentioned in the book, but I didn't even connect that. So Carrie's taking Percocet, and
Yeah.
then also Cadence was doing drugs, but once she stops taking the drugs, she no longer sees the ghost. So I love that connection.
Yeah, and I
Well,
think that was a more subtle in the television show
mhm.
than it was in the book. So
It's good though, because then it lets audiences sort of make up their own mind about it. Well,
absolutely.
yeah. Well, Amanda, first off, I want to tell you, I love the show. The costumes are so gorgeous. So congratulations. I'm really happy for you. I was asking Daria, I said, are we like, is there Emmy season? But I guess it'll be the following, not this current upcoming, but the year after. So fingers crossed for you that you'll get lots of acknowledgement. And I know the fans, as I mentioned, are all over it, all over the costumes and the fashions in this show. So you're going to be setting some trends.
Yes, thank you so much. Yes, it was truly such an honor. And again, just to say that I think that stories like this is why I'm a costume designer. It's why I do television, so that we can, try to find a way to impact the world with what we do and tell stories that mean something.
So, anyway, thank you everyone who joined. I want to thank Amanda for joining us today to talk about We Were Liars, which is on Amazon. And if you haven't seen the show, please check it out. Obviously, if you got to this point, you have seen it because we were talking about spoilers. But anyway, as always, I really want to appreciate my fans, for my viewers, I should say, for stopping by and spending some time with me. So, take care, everyone, and have a great day. Bye.